So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, which is Molly Martin. And Molly, tell us a little bit about yourself and then launch right into your presentation.
Okay, I will do the screen share now.
Oh, see,
Oh,
what? The blue button on the blue button.
Here?
Yeah. Now
Terry.
open PowerPoint.
There. All right, I guess we got the first slide. My name is Molly Martin, and I've been a WARP member since 1999. Our experience in Liberia, our Peace Corps experience, began in 1968 when my husband Terry and I went to Monrovia to teach. And he taught at the University of Liberia, and I taught elementary school. So that was our 2 years. Here we see the continental map, and Monrovia, where we lived, is right here where the cursor is. And after we leave Liberia, we'll visit Senegal with Debbie, and then Morocco with Susan. She was in Morocco for her Peace Corps experience. This is the close-up view of Western Africa. Okay, and this is the political boundaries of the counties in Liberia. They changed significantly since 1968 when we arrived, but some of the counties are generally the same area. Lofa County we'll talk about later because of its textile connection. And Monrovia is where we lived in Montserrado County with the Atlantic Ocean here. These are just a few points about the history of Liberia. In 1822, freed slaves began arriving from North America, and they became known as the settlers or the Americo-Liberians, and they encountered the indigenous peoples, and they dominated those peoples for a long time. Okay, so in 1847, Liberia declared independence, and it was never colonized by European countries, as were the surrounding countries in West Africa, although they regarded America as kind of a colonizing power, which it actually was, and they actually used the American form of government as their model. If we fast forward to 1980, we have a coup which marked the end of Americo-Liberian rule, and civil strife began then for a quarter of a century. The wonderful resources that people were fighting over involved rubber, timber, diamonds, and iron ore, all plentiful in Liberia. Many people have heard of Ellen Johnson Sirleaf because she was the first female president in Africa, and she came to power in 2005. And our current president there is George Weah. And Terry, why isn't this forwarding? I'm trying to forward the slide. It's not forwarding.
And click on
here. Okay. This is West Point. This is where we lived in Monrovia. And it was a third of a square mile. It was home to 10,000 people at the time. The Montserrado River is up here, and it joins the Atlantic Ocean here. So the peninsula changes shape over the years, and now I believe it's actually larger than it was then due to tides, silt deposits from the river, and storms. So the people that lived here were often coming from upcountry looking for work in the city, and they came from all the different counties with multiple groups, tribal groups involved and living side by side at that time. One of my third grade students drew this map. They made a book. The first year I taught third grade in this school up here, and they created a book about their community, which the Monrovia Consolidated School System printed out at the end of the year, so everybody had a copy. There was one road that went through the peninsula, and our house was over here, and So this was the general market, which was a big focus of our food buying and textile buying all the time we were there. Our Peace Corps house was here pictured, and those are some neighborhood children and a friend of ours with Terry here on the right. My third grade class was 19 students ranging in age from 8 to 21. Often they were the only child in their family who was sent to school because the fees for schooling and the fees for the required t-shirt were more than most families could handle. So the family would pick the student most likely to succeed academically to send to school. And if that student didn't try hard, heaven forbid, that would be the end of their academic career, and another child would be sent in his or her place. All of my students tried very, very hard. They were excellent students. They came from many different backgrounds and countries even, and they got along just great in that 11-foot by 13-foot classroom, squished together on 3 benches, and with me standing in the doorway to the outdoors. That's how small the room was. They were all really bilingual because of their indigenous language as well as Liberian English. So in our book, they could write about whatever they wanted. They could draw whatever they wanted. And this young man decided he was interested in the clothing. Because of the multiple backgrounds of the residents of West Point, you saw lots of different kinds of clothes all the time. Different colors worn on various occasions, different types of weaving, different prints, and so on. And this was a constant source of discussion among the students. They hadn't had any crayons or paints in their previous time in the school system, but I found some, and this was the result. These are 4 of the paintings that I kept. The Fonte Fisher boats were up here, and they were colorfully painted dugout canoes, which were really, really long, and they were had at the end of them an Evinrude motor, which Elizabeth did not draw here, but we heard them every day because they were tested in a very large barrel of water right outside our classroom. So you can imagine with an Evinrude motor being tested outside your classroom, that most conversation would come to a halt, which it did. But we never resented it because the Fonte brought us most of the fish for Monrovia, and it was really fresh and delicious. So that was that painting. This was a house like our Peace Corps house with the ocean in the back. And here is the tribal court, which was in the middle of West Point, where people solved their palavers face to face with a table in the middle and the Liberian flag modeled on the American flag above it. Down here, we saw the ships, which we could see every day. You could look out any time of day and see international shipping coming around that corner of Liberia. And they often flew the Liberian flag of convenience, which this one is doing. After 1 year, we moved to another home because I was then assigned to a different school to teach first grade, and this was Snapper Hill. Snapper Hill was on the other side of the general market, just as close, thankfully, so we were able to use that. And this school was a lot more along the lines of an American school, you would say. The children each had their own desks, and there was a narrower age range of students. So I had from, I would say, 7 to 10-year-olds for first grade. And again, they tried really hard. They were excellent students, and there was never a single discipline problem or anything like that. In the general market, you got to see some of the outfits that people wore. This is a wax print the woman is wearing in her lapa suit. At that time, there were no knockoffs from China or anywhere else. It was just the real wax prints from Holland and from England, and they were always colorful and beautiful. And here we see just a tiny corner of the general market, which was showing the food. At the market, we could buy cloth. So I bought this indigo cloth, indigo dyed cloth. It was dyed up country and brought down for sale in Monrovia. And I would bring it to a Mandingo tailor, and the Mandingo tailor would sew it without measuring me, just looking at me. He would sew it into a garment that fit perfectly and was beautifully stitched in 3 days. I brought, this was a batik that I bought at the market and brought to a Mandingo tailor. These were really the tailors par excellence. They figured out how to divide up the cloth. This is the front and this is the back. I would never presume to give them even the slightest bit of advice or instructions, because they just did what they did and it was always just great. They used top of the line Bernina sewing machines, and that was always hooked up to the city electric lines above their sheds.
Molly, I want to interrupt for a minute. Maggie wants to know, was the lacing done by local artists as well?
Yeah, so that was not lacing, that was really stitching, machine stitching. Yeah, the dress, yeah, I can go back, I guess. I don't know how to go back to here. Oh, here. The machine stitching that you see here. Oh, even one more. Okay. So here you can see this. This is machine stitching, which is done by guiding the Bernina machine around all those little curlicues. It's not lace, it's just stitching. And it has a backing behind the collar or behind the neckline there, so that they can do that. Does that answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
One other listener made a suggestion that you try to put your view on full screen, because that will give us a bigger image of what you're showing us.
Okay, the green.
Maybe your helpful technical advisor in the background.
Oh, here?
There's that arm.
Yeah, is that better?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Beautiful.
Okay.
Fabulous.
Okay. So you get a better view of the actual stitching here, and you can actually see the indigo dyeing as well. So
Great.
yeah, all right. Yeah, so yeah, okay, so this is the batiking that they did. It was done on damask, by the way, imported damask, the indigo and the batik dyeing. The men of country in Lofa County, which we saw initially on that map, had strip looms where they, double-headed looms where they were the weavers of cotton, which came from their own local fields. This is natural cotton. And they would do these strips that would come off the breast beam of the loom like this. And then it would be folded up like this for sale at the local market. And people who bought this cotton would then take it to a tailor and have these robes made. These are men's robes. They would be, so the strips would be sewn together either by hand or by machine. I think these are by hand, I'm pretty sure. And they would always have a pocket over the heart that was accessible from the left hand, from the left side. One interesting thing about Lofa County cotton was that they had big cotton trees there. And apparently you could take the cotton from the cotton trees when it fell and incorporate that into the grown cotton and make a superior product, a superior woven product. But I could never tell whether something I saw had that aspect to it or not. Sometime I'd like to meet somebody who could figure that out for me, how you would tell, but it was something that they appreciated. We really loved the food in Liberia. It was, in my view, the finest cuisine I've ever had in my life, and we eat it all the time, even now. The neighbor ladies taught me how to cook it and how to go to the market to find which of the greens were appropriate or which of the various ingredients I should get and how much I should pay for them. So I had a wonderful tutorial many times while I was there about Liberian food. We had Liberian food 3 times last week because I've always been able to find the different ingredients here in the US. The other ways that my experience influenced me was I actually was a registered nurse. And when we came back from Liberia, I was a registered nurse again for 8 years. And after that, I turned a corner and went to the African interests that I had and worked at the Smithsonian Museum for 3 years as in the education department. In 1981, we moved to Boston, and I was able to take courses in African art there and work at an African art gallery and start bringing African textiles and African art to various schools and institutions. So that was also something that continues to the present day. And of course, my collection of textiles is, if I say so myself, really great. So it's immense, Terry says. Yes, it's immense too, yes. Okay, so the final slide here points to a way to benefit Liberia. The Friends of Liberia exists for helping the country with health and education initiatives. And on October 1st, they're having the third part of their 60-year anniversary auction, online auction, where you can either contribute things or buy things or both. So that's my talk, and thank you for listening.
Molly, thank you so much. There are a couple of questions that came in that I
Okay.
didn't have a chance to ask you about the country cloth.
Uh-huh.
One person wanted to know if the cotton was hand spun, and
Yes.
someone else wanted to know which thread was used in the shirt collar.
Which thread was used in the shirt collar that was the stitching?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So, all right. The first of all, about the country cloth, the strip woven cloth, that spindle was the natural cotton that the women spun. The women were the spinners, and that was natural cotton grown in Local County. The way that they would presumably incorporate the cotton from the cotton tree, that's something that is still mysterious to me. I've only heard about it. I've never actually been able to figure out whether cotton I was looking at had that aspect to it. And the stitching was, these are modern stitching that the Mandingo people would be importing into Monrovia to do that decorative embroidery.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah.
There are a couple other questions I want to address sort of for everyone. Someone wanted to see the slide with that dress again with the fabulous lace.
Okay.
And what I want to say is that all of these videos are going to go up on the Warp website, and you can watch it again. You can stop and just enjoy the heck out of that slide as long as you want to on your own computer. It takes Kelsey usually a week, maybe 2 at the most, to get it fine-tuned and edited and up on the site. But she will send an email out to everyone to let you know where you can watch all of these presentations again.
Okay.
Someone also asked about sharing the link to the auction.
Okay.
Kelsey is going to share all of those follow-up contact links in a follow-up email to you. So even if you don't want to have to watch the whole program again, you'll get an email that has all that in. And she's going to straighten me out if I'm telling you wrong.
Okay.
Okay, now back to a couple more questions to Molly. Someone wants to know where the damask was imported from.
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, it was from Europe, I presume, and I never actually saw it coming into Roberts Port, but I presume it came into the port and was purchased and brought up country, and it seemed to be the cloth that all of that kola nut and indigo dyeing was done on. All of the pieces that we have from up country are having that as a basis, the damask.
Very good. Okay, we do have another question about natural dye, but I'm going to hold that to the end because I think that might be something we want to ask each of our speakers to address.
Sure.
So Molly, I'm going to thank you, and we're going to turn next to Debbie Durham, who will share her story and stories.
We're on board, I think.
Yeah, looks good.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Nangadef. My name is Debbie Durham, and obviously here I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Senegal. Thank you to Molly for sharing the fabulous maps of our locations. I'm just going to point out on the map on the right, the two towns that I lived in while I was a Peace Corps volunteer. First year I was in Saint Louis, which is up here on the coast, former capital of Senegal. The second year I was in a little town called Fatick, which is halfway between Kaolack and Mbour. Just a few notes about Senegal before I launch into other photos is Senegal was a colony of France up until 1960. So they gained their independence in 1961. As a result, French is the official language in Senegal, and the second language that is most spoken is called Wolof, W-O-L-O-F. 2/5 of the population of Senegal is from the Wolof society. During Peace Corps training, I actually majored in French as an undergrad, and that probably has something to do with why I was placed in Senegal. But during Peace Corps training, during the 3 months before we were assigned to our communities, we studied French and we studied Wolof. Peace Corps has been in Senegal since 1963 up until today. Great place to be a volunteer. I wanted to also mention a little history about Senegal. This is a photograph of Gorée Island, which is about 3 kilometers from the capital city of Dakar. This is the location where millions of Africans were warehoused in buildings on the island before they were put onto ships and traded and sold into the New World. It is now a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and some of those buildings on the island are museums. Also wanted to mention that while I was a Peace Corps volunteer, Leopold Senghor was president. He is really, for those of you that may not know the name, he is a very famous, highly respected gentleman who was educated in France. His wife is French. He's a statesman, first president of Senegal starting in 1961, a poet. And he's also very well known for his work with other writers on La Négritude movement during the 1930s. Definitely my love and passion for textiles and handcrafts started here at Marché Kermel in capital city of Dakar. I just became enamored with everything I saw. And this particular basket vendor, I'm sure I bought, 5 or 6 baskets at this particular location. First year that I was a volunteer, I was assigned to the town of Saint Louis, which is, as we pointed out on the map, on the northwest corner of Senegal between the Atlantic Ocean and the Senegal River. These are scenes that come from my everyday life in Senegal. The photograph of the pirogue, the flatboat in the right corner, and I'm sure that Molly had this as well. This is something I saw right in front of the apartment building where I lived. The 2 gentlemen on the lower right corner were tailors, and I'm pretty sure this is the shop where I had the dress that I'm wearing today made. 95% of Senegalese are Muslim. Thus, you will find a mosque in most communities, as we did in Senegal, as we did in Saint Louis. I was a 7th, 8th, and 9th grade teacher at Lycée Ahmed Fall in Saint Louis. This was a school that was only for girls, and it was administered by a French staff, and most of the teachers were French. I had a really hard time adjusting to the fact that I was surrounded by a highly French influenced community at Lycée Ahmed Fall. So I asked Peace Corps if they would relocate me year 2 to the interior or to a more rural community, which I thought would be a little bit more African, you might say. And Peace Corps agreed and said they would send me to Fatigue. This is a photograph of my students. I found out this week while doing some research that the president of Senegal currently, Macky Sall, actually lived in Fatigue when he was a small boy, and he was the mayor of this town from 2002 to 2012. This came as a huge shock to me. So this Fatigue is located in the Sahel. I was there during a drought, and that affected not only the economy locally. Most of the people that lived in this area were peanut farmers or herders. These are scenes from my town. The photograph here shows this building here is where I lived on the second floor with 2 other volunteers. This is my school where I taught 6th and 7th grade. Very common photographs of things going on in the town, waiting in line for water, dancing and music and djembe drumming. It was one of the most exciting and wonderful parts of living in Senegal was the music. After leaving the Peace Corps, I came back to the United States, worked in Washington, D.C., I think down the street from Mali at one point, and worked in DC until 1990. This particular trip to Zaire, which is now called Democratic Republic of Congo. Zaire is, for those of you who may or may not know much about it, it's a very, very dangerous country to this day. While I was there, Mobutu Sese Seko was the self-proclaimed president. It was a very corrupt and dangerous place. I had to be careful every time I walked out the door about what might happen during the day. However, I was also very, very fortunate because I was able to get involved managing a small cooperative called Je Gagne Ma Vie. It is translated to I earn my own living. And it was composed of about 10 producer groups. The one in this photograph is a group of young ladies who made dolls and were sold at the boutique. The boutique, Je Gagne Ma Vie, was part of a center for the physically handicapped. There was a rehabilitation center there, a small restaurant, and then this handicraft shop. These are all photographs from the shop, different products that were produced there. One of the shacks where one of our members worked. This is a sewing machine here that you can hardly see in the dark. Paul was the president of the co-op. And so that was, I just wanted you to see a little bit of that. After leaving Zaire, I found out that there was a professor at Iowa State University who was focusing her research on handcraft development, the marketing, merchandising, and cultural perspectives. And so I was so excited. I applied to graduate school there and ended up 93 to 96 in Ames, Iowa. Why is this connected to Peace Corps? Well, when I wrote my master's thesis, all of the participants in my study on the success and failure factors of Peace Corps monitored income generating projects, they all had served around the world. It was a wonderful time for me, a very exciting study, a lot of vicarious pleasures learning about their experiences when they were volunteers. I was very pleased and proud to receive the first place award for my master's thesis in 1997. The last year that I was in Ames, I served as a recruiter for the university for the Peace Corps. Last but not least, my last little few slides are about sister communities of San Ramon, Nicaragua. This is a project that I served on the board for 3 or 4 years. It was founded by 2 Peace Corps volunteers. And in 1993, our executive director, Angie Price, is living in Nicaragua in Matagalpa. All of the projects that we fund in San Ramon are determined by a committee in the San Ramon municipality to let us know as fundraisers here in the States how we can best serve their needs. I have listed here how our funding has been spent. Currently, water and sanitation is our #1 goal in terms of improving those aspects in the very, very, very rural communities. We also sell crafts. That's something I get involved with during the holiday season here in the Triangle area of North Carolina. These are some of our products. And this is our Ecotour program. There's a lot of civil unrest in Nicaragua presently. And also we have something called a pandemic going on. So we are not leading Ecotours presently, but I just wanted to tell you that this is, once they get back up again, this is really a mini Peace Corps experience for those of you who don't have time to join the Peace Corps but would like to know what it was like. I can guarantee that this will give you a really good taste. We live with local families in San Ramon. We spend a few days birding and hiking up at Finca Esperanza Verde, Green Hope Farm. And this is a photograph that's taken from the farm. Here we are, our group is making nacatamales, which is a local dish made with steaming rice and chicken in banana leaves. And here are my resources. This photo is some of the young ladies that were my students in Fatik. I will say one little thing more. My sister sent me an email this morning to tell me that the National Book Award for Poetry this year was just awarded to a Senegalese man named Baba Badji, who wrote a poem called Ghost Letters on what it means to be Senegalese, Black, and living in the United States. So that's it for me. Thanks very much for participating.
Thank you, Debbie. This is great. One question came in. What kinds of looms are being used by weavers in El Chile?
Backstrap.
Backstrap. Oh, that's right. And someone else reminded me of something I was going to ask. Would you be willing to close your screen out, but stand up so that everyone can get a great look at your beautiful dress?
Sure, I will stop share.
There you go.
And do I pin myself?
I think if you just stand up and people can put it on speaker view, we'll see you. Lovely. And Debbie told us earlier that she had that dress made for her.
In Senegal, yes, when I was a
Senegal.
Peace Corps volunteer.
Very good. A couple other details, if you would, in the chat, could you write the poet's information down?
Yes.
And also someone wanted to know where in the Triangle area your craft store is located.
We don't actually have a store. We sell our products at holiday sales at different, mostly churches in November and December.
Okay.
So products can be purchased through me, which is why I left my email there, and I'm happy to share photographs of what we have.
Excellent. We have discovered in these past programs that there usually are people that are interested in buying things or otherwise supporting the organizations you've talked about. So that contact information will be appreciated.
Sure.
All right. Thank you, Debbie. And I think we're about to move to Morocco. Susan, will you
let's see.
Share a few words so maybe we can see your lovely face?
Let's see. Can you see
Yes.
my face now?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, okay. I see you. And am I screen sharing?
Yes.
Okay. And where do I tap to do the slideshow thing?
I think you can just use the up and down arrows on your keyboard. Give that a try and see if it works.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm going to tell you about my time in the Peace Corps in Morocco. Deb Chandler suggested this question to us. How did our time in Peace Corps help determine the rest of our lives? Which I think is an excellent question and really fun to answer. My answer is it totally changed mine. And I'll tell you how, but first I'll tell you a little bit of background on Morocco. So Morocco is on the northwest corner of Africa, as you saw in the earlier slides, just across from Spain, across the Straits of Gibraltar. And on this slide, the top red writing is the village where I was in the Peace Corps, Sidi Katman Zawiya, and where I've kept up contacts for a long time. The climate is sort of like California. It's in the foothills of the Middle Atlas, or almost. It's a plains. So it's a lovely place to be. A little bit of Moroccan history. They had a king for a long time. The French came in and controlled it from 1912 to 1956. And then they got independence in 56 with not very strong battles because the French were concentrating on holding on to Algeria. I arrived in 65 after the 56 independence. I didn't realize how that was sort of a significant time, but I think it was. And they're a constitutional monarchy. They had a king before, and now they have a parliament and a king. And I feel like I think of it as a relaxed Muslim country, which many others are too, but this, I think, especially because it's on this crossroads between sub-Saharan Africa, the Middle East, and Spain and Europe. They've got a lot of different people going through there, and they just get along with everybody. So it was a great place to be in that sense. So how did it change my life? It led to new career choices, new lifelong friends, and new family members. So in a lot of ways. And to see how that happened, I need to tell you a little bit about my time in Morocco. I showed you where I was, up sort of to the north of Morocco. And what I did there is I worked in a rural women's center. And I was given that job because I had done sewing as a teenager. So I was into textiles at that point already, but I didn't choose Morocco. As Debbie said, I think you can be assigned, and that's what happened. Morocco for me was a very happy accident. I just said I didn't want to go to Vietnam or any place they spoke French, since with my 1 quarter in French at the University of Minnesota, the French people weren't very nice to me when I went. So I got this letter from Peace Corps that said, although they speak French in the cities, you will be out in the country and speaking Arabic. And I thought, I should have just shut up. What have I done now? But in fact, Arabic is a tremendous advantage. It was for my academic work, for my consulting work, and certainly in personal relationships. So that was one real benefit of Peace Corps. Living in Morocco, I fell in love with the people and the culture. I love the Mediterranean warmth in how people related, which was quite different from the reserved Scandinavian and German population where I grew up. Not to mention the food and the textiles. This is in my Peace Corps service, looking at some not hand-woven textiles. I got interested in glitzy nylon pieces because they looked really great in candlelight, but I moved on to other textiles. In the Women's Center, I taught with another American who was a home ec major and 2 Moroccan women, home ec skills, knitting, sewing, embroidery, health. The Moroccans were basically much better at most of that than us, although we were there to teach them how to teach also. This was just after independence. Girls hadn't gone to school much because the French hadn't built schools for Moroccans. The women we worked with had gone to about 8th grade and were living away from home, which was really revolutionary, which I didn't realize when I was there at the time. So when I went to Morocco, I was an undergraduate. I had just graduated from college in psychology and wasn't sure what to do next. In the Peace Corps, I discovered anthropology, which I thought had the advantages of psychology. You could talk to people. Without the disadvantages, you didn't have to cure them of anything. So after Peace Corps, I went back to graduate school in anthropology at the University of Michigan. And my thesis was research to understand the strength I saw in Moroccan women, as opposed to the sort of weak, submissive stereotype we in the West have often of Muslim women. And that became my first book, Patience and Power, about women's lives and the ways in which they have power. And by the way, that woman was someone who was very nice to me in the Peace Corps, sort of adopted me, and is the mother or grandmother of one of my lifelong friends there. I'll tell you more about them later. So getting the PhD led me to two careers. One, teaching as a college professor, and I did that for several years. During that, I also did research that led to this book and another book, Adolescence in a Moroccan Town, with my husband. But in Peace Corps, I also learned to love the hands-on approach to women and culture, the personal contact. So I moved from teaching to consulting on economic development for people like the World Bank and USAID, often worked in Morocco, usually with women on projects like clean drinking water, girls' education, and so on. And both Peace Corps and consulting let me see the economic needs of women, and I tried to address those. And that began in the Peace Corps when I helped set up several co-ops, making bulky sweaters, embroidering table linens, and making caftans to sell in the US. If WARP had existed then, they could have given me some good advice probably, based on the experience of their members. For example, the bulky sweaters didn't sell. And they might have told me I should have looked at the market. The table linens, I left after the co-op was set up and they never got done. And they would have probably, WARP would have said, you need to nurture a co-op. You can't just take off. I had some experience. There's my consulting experience when I would go out in the countryside and talk to various women for people like the World Bank who didn't speak Arabic, so I could see what the women really wanted. Back to the caftans. So I had some experience making caftans. I had these caftans tailor-made for my bridesmaids in my wedding. And they were, Moroccan style A-line, but otherwise the buttons down the front, just like traditional Moroccan caftans. And one reason I chose them is because my wedding dress was my grandmother's and it had all these little buttons down the front. So the caftans went really well with that. However, when I tried to have them made in the States, I said, don't put plaid trim on paisley fabric, okay? They put plaid trim on the paisley fabric, and WARP would have probably told me, you need to stay around and supervise and teach people some design principles, but I didn't have that advantage of WARP at that time. As a consultant, I continued wanting to help women meet their economic needs. And I started selling Moroccan rugs online, first for myself in 1994. I was a real pioneer in that area, and I wanted to see if it worked before I got women involved, and it did work. So I began to work directly with village women weavers in 2001 in the Kobe in the south and 2003 in Ben Smim in the Middle Atlas with two different styles of rugs. So that led to my third career, was selling rugs online. So what I would do for selling rugs online directly for women is I would go to the village, take pictures of the women and their rugs, and interview the women a little bit, get a brief biography, put up the rug description, size, and price, and sell them. So my website looks like this with all the rugs with information about the weavers. I even suggested people, if they bought a rug, should put a picture of the weavers next to the rug with a paragraph so people could see them. I really liked, people learning about the weavers. So this did work, and the weavers really appreciated that selling their rugs, they got much better paid, although it was hard to figure out, but they did get better paid by me than by local middlemen. And I wrote any of you who want to sell things online, I wrote a how-to article about that Kelsey will send out information on later, and I can email it to you. I even took some of the weavers to the International Folk Art Market in 2016. The lady in orange is Kabira, now the head of the weaving co-op in the village of Nakob, and the other young woman is her translator. And here you can see some of their rugs, and there are more of them, the gorgeous kind of work that they do. So my website isn't active right now. I'm not selling for them, but another group, what I wanted to do was replace myself with a Moroccan woman. But to find one who knew English and web skills was really hard. I didn't succeed. But there's a new group called theanu.com, which will be on my last slide, that sells for over 100 Moroccan artisans, mostly textile people, giving them fair prices and training for Moroccans, 2 men, 2 women, to take over the whole business, to be in control of their own destiny. So I suggest people look there for online things. I joined Warp in 2005, and they helped me with the online sales. My first meeting was the meeting in South Carolina, and I think some of you will recognize some of these people, if not yourselves, where we went and learned to dye indigo. And there's someone you've just seen. And I also benefited from selling things to Warp members. I didn't remember selling things there, but Molly is wearing a Hand of Fatima earring that I think I was selling earrings. I often did jewelry sometimes, as well as the rugs. So Warp was certainly helpful to me in that enterprise, in giving me benefit of their experience buying things. I often sold things because they liked gorgeous textiles, and made some good friends. And then my fourth career is that I became a tour leader. Because I'd seen lots of Morocco consulting and met a lot of people in the Peace Corps, I had the connections to take people around Morocco. And my goal was cultural tourism. I wanted people to meet people. Especially now, I worry about the Islamophobia we've got, but I worry, I still wanted people to meet people back then. So we go to people's homes, artisans and others, and can try out some of the crafts. And recently we started going to Nakob, the southern village I work with. And this is one woman's house. Actually, it's the woman over on the right-hand side, has a house on the edge of town with a great big courtyard that we invite the artisans to come. Each bring 3 rugs, so it's not too overwhelming. Stand by their rugs. I bring a translators so that the tourists can talk to the women about their rugs and buy them if they'd like. So you get experience making things and buying things if you'd like. Currently, I'm not leading tours until the COVID situation gets better. But then I do plan to, and you can email me if you'd like to be on my list to hear about when I am leading a tour again. And my website has not been active with new rugs for quite a while, but I've discovered that some people have asked about them, and you can order the rugs you see there and the women can remake them. So this, for example, is a rug that was recently remade based on one of the rugs on the website. The woman's daughter remade it. And it's sort of perhaps for this occasion, a happy problem. There was a misunderstanding, and so this rug was made without actually being ordered. Someone asked about it. My village representatives thought they really wanted it, but I make a policy of not ordering something till I've got the money in hand, because my first sale, the person disappeared. So this was made by accident, basically, but it's here. It's 4 by 7.5 feet, all wool, and costs about $900, including shipping to the US. So my email address is going to be on the last slide. You can contact me if you're interested in that. And I said other effects of my Peace Corps experience were lifelong friends. So I have several. This is one. This is Halima Hanini, who is sitting there with her, probably her sheep for the holiday, in the yard behind the house where we lived. Behind her is a primary school in the village. We were sort of at the edge of the village. And this is Halima and me on one of my tours, not too long ago, but a while ago. And our first day, we go to her home for lunch, and you get to go to a working class family's home, have delicious food. She gets paid for her food, and people get to meet a lovely person. So that's the kind of thing that I like to do. And that's one benefit of Peace Corps, is these friends. Also, family. I said family was a benefit. This is a taxi driver in the village who was very kind to me and my American colleagues, sort of looked out for us, like said, don't buy meat from that butcher. He has a refrigerator. It could be 2 days old, and things like that. He was very sweet. He's the grandfather of Halima, our unofficially adopted Moroccan daughter who you see in the center in yellow. My other daughter is left to her, well, beside her. And beside her is Halima's Palestinian husband and their 3 children, who are our grandchildren. So I also got another daughter out of the Peace Corps service, which is wonderful. And she's the granddaughter of that man you saw. And we have another family located in Morocco in the city. The man in the white shirt is the son of the lady on the cover of my first book. We stayed in touch with that family. And they're wonderful, wonderful people that we really enjoy knowing. So lots of benefits. So to conclude, Peace Corps had a fantastic effect on my life, and it's a wonderful organization. And somebody wondered about where Peace Corps is now. Everybody overseas was called home in March 2020 with COVID, but their Peace Corps is planning to send them back when things get better. People picking up their lives again and going again may be tricky, but that's their plan anyway. Also, I want to tell you about something called Peace Corps Response, which has 3 to 12-month service opportunities for people with real expertise. You used to have to be a health volunteer. That's not true anymore. Then you used to have been a volunteer, and I think that's not even true anymore. Anybody can join. So those of you who didn't get in Peace Corps, there's still a chance, and I've got a link to that on my, whoops, last slide. Nope, it's not there, but Kelsey will send it out. So again, I wanted just to say that I thought Peace Corps and WARP, who are sponsoring this panel, are very similar organizations in that they want to help people to help themselves. So, and they're both wonderful, and I recommend them highly. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Would you hit your stop sharing on the screen?
Okay.
And we'll take a couple of questions. It's almost 2, and I don't like to run over too far because we all have other things to do, but I do want to have a chance for a couple of questions for our panelists. And then if anyone wants to hop in and say hello, we'll do that for the last 5 minutes, and that'll be fun. So, Susan, you've had several people singing your praises in the chat while you've been talking about being a good tour leader and also a great presentation. Also, I need to, let's see, go back. There was a question about natural indigo, Molly, that was at your presentation. I was sort of holding that question to give to each of the panelists. I think with natural dye being on the upsurgence in the United States right now, we have knowledge not just of indigo, but other kinds of natural dye. Can you speak to its use in the textiles that you experienced, Molly, Debbie, and Susan?
Yeah, so in Liberia, they had naturally growing indigo, and they used that in their dyeing. I think that indigo is really growing all across West Africa, as far as I know, certainly in Nigeria and, all the way to Liberia. They use cola nuts. Cola nuts were another form of dye. The brown that you see in a lot of the shirts of that time, or the lapas, the 2-yard pieces called lapas, they were dyed with cola nut and indigo both.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Debbie, somebody says that they think your professor at Iowa State was Mary Luttrell. Is that true?
That is absolutely true. And I meant to say her name, but in the speed of it, I forgot. Yes.
Yeah, she's also connected with WARP, I think. Is that right?
I don't know how active she is.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still in touch with her, and last time I saw her was at the International Folk Art Mart in Santa Fe.
Very good. Anything about natural dye among the groups you worked with?
I didn't work with textile groups when I was a Peace Corps volunteer, and it's sort of out of my range. Actually, Molly told me that there's a lot of indigo dyeing in Saint Louis in the north, but I be honest with you, I didn't actually realize that.
Okay, very good. Susan, how about in Morocco?
In the past, they used natural dye. Now, the village I work with in the south has really beautiful blues because they often use indigo, but not the plant. They use chunks of dye, and I think it's chemical, but it's the exact same chemical composition as vegetable indigo. And so they have beautiful blues that they make down there. A couple of the weavers I talked to for my book, oh, I forgot to mention my book, Women Artisans of Morocco, which is due to warp. That's why I wanted to say it, because it's people I met in warp that led to me doing it. So in that book, some of the women used madder root still, and they used to use madder more. If you go to buy a rug in Morocco, all the merchants will tell you it's natural dye. It almost never is. So don't believe them.
Very good. Okay, so it's just turned 2 o'clock, and what I'm going to suggest we do is all of those of you who served at all in the Peace Corps or have done international development work, why don't you unmute yourselves and let's just have everyone say what country they worked in, just so we can all get a sense of how international this group today really is. Somebody want to jump in?
Ghana.
Hi. Oh,
And where were you, Donna?
No.
Oh, Danielle, Ghana.
I was in Ghana.
Very good.
And
I was in Honduras.
Yeah.
I was in Nigeria.
And so was I. We met there.
I was in Morocco with Susan.
And I was in Guatemala.
I was in Morocco.
I was in
the Philippines and Nicaragua both.
Very
I was
good.
in Kenya.
I was in Dahomey, which is now Benin, West Africa.
I was in Honduras.
I was in Botswana.
Oh, Botswana. Who was in Botswana?
Mary Jo.
Joan.
Oh, yes, of course. It's good to see you. I didn't see your face.
I know, I missed the whole thing. I thought it was at 2. Then I just came in 5 minutes ago. I'm so sorry.
Well, the good news is you can watch it on the website.
Yes, that is good.
I was in
news.
Niger. I was in Niger.
Oh. Anyone
Brazil.
else?
Brazil.
I did.
Okay. Any other one wants to jump in?
I was in Honduras.
Very good.
India.
Ah, this is the first India we've heard. Thank you.
I was also in Ghana with Crossroads Africa. It's a different after Peace Corps. 10 years after I went to Crossroads Africa.
Very good.
I was also in India.
You know, this is quite a sizable club we have here, isn't it? It's great that we can come together on a Saturday, whether it's afternoon or morning or evening, depending on what time zone you're in, and see each other and hear from these great stories. Our panelists were fabulous, inspiring today. I want to thank you, and I know I'm going to watch this program again just because there was so much to get out of it. Before I sign off, I do want to share the website for Weave a Real Peace, just so that you know. It's weavearealpeace.org. If you're not already a member, we'd certainly love to have you join us. So you can look at our old newsletters by clicking on the newsletter tab if you want to see that. And you can see the most recent 2 days ago. You can click on membership and you can find a place to join Warp. And those are the most important things to know. Deborah, do you want to say any closing words for us today?
Only that it's exciting to hear all the people from all the places. We're really glad everybody came, and we hope that we'll keep seeing you once a month and more. We're going to be coming up with more and more ways for people to get involved in work.
Great. Well, thank you for letting me moderate today. This was a lot of fun. And Farewell to all, and we'll see you next time.